Greetings, mortals, and welcome. Please present your tickets for validation. Thank you. Your existence has been acknowledged, and you have been granted access every Thursday and Friday. You will be accompanying your guides, Krista and Brandy, along with a world-renowned guest. They will be exploring an intriguing tendril of what humans refer to as reality each week, as they strive to advance you further down the path to the truths of your physical earth and what lies on the other side. Remember to please keep your hands and feet in the vehicle at all times, and do not exit until the craft has come to a complete stop.
Hey everybody, welcome.
Hey everybody.
How's everybody doing tonight? I hope all right. I hope better than Brandy.
I know. I do not feel well.
Right?
Yeah, but it's all right. It's all right.
Oh yeah. You'll be all right.
Still got my smile and still got the laugh, so we're okay.
There you go. I know what you feel like. You feel like you got hit by a Mack truck. I get it.
I do.
Yeah. So
anyway, there's something I want to do before we get started, Chris. I know we didn't talk about this, but I just want to lay this out there. Last Thursday, our show, after the show was over, we received a lot of comments. Though we appreciate you commenting, please do not attack our guests, our co-hosts, or us on the comments. Krista and I have decided that we are no longer going to tolerate it, that if there is a bad comment or attack, you're just going to be banned from Blondes and Booze. And we hate to say it, but it's getting to the point where it's ridiculous. So we're just not going to have it anymore. This is a place of no drama, and we're going to leave it that way. Okay.
Right. And here's the thing, we're all adults. As I said in that comment, we're all adults here. If you don't like what the topic is about on the show, or you don't like who we have on the show, or any show for that matter, turn it off. That's all you have to do.
Keep scrolling. Yeah, just keep scrolling. It's nothing but a finger movement, people. It doesn't take a lot of energy. So, right. But for the most part, we had a lot of great comments, and we do appreciate you and everything that you say. We do read them, and we try to get back to everybody, and we do thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So we have a great show tonight. Josh will be coming on tonight with us. And we also have Ronald Murphy.
Yes, I'm excited. He's got he's just one of those people that draw you in when he starts talking. Mm-hmm. So I really enjoy talking with him. Yes.
Me too. So I'm pretty excited about this for sure. Brandy, you want to tell everybody real quick about our event we have coming up in, when is it? Next month. Let me bring it up here real quick.
Oh, this is in May. I'm like, next month. Next month's April. And I was trying to think real quick. That's like, wait a minute. Of course, it is on May 18th, and it lasts till the 19th. But this is going to be a great event. We're going to start off the day with some speakers on the paranormal, the cryptid, UFO, aliens. We're going to have a great afternoon of that. Then we're going to feed you dinner, and then we're going to ghost hunt from 7 to 2 a.m. I mean, we got a long, long night ahead of us that night, and that place at Ashmore Estates never disappoints. We've got some great people that are going to be speaking there. We're going to have Robin Terry, Josh Hurd. We're going to have other great people that are going to be in attendance, which is Letitia Nunnelly, Jessica Potter, Rachel Marie, and then our very own Paranormal Among Us, Paul. He's going to come and hang out with us too. So don't forget, you can get your tickets on Eventbrite. Just look up Blondes and Booze, and it should be the first one you come to.
Yep, absolutely. I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to go ahead and bring up Ron real quick. Hey there.
Hey, how are you?
We're good.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad you could make it. We definitely appreciate you.
Especially
no worries. Last minute stuff, you saved the day.
Well, I try to be everybody's Superman. If I can, I like to wear the cape. But if it was anybody other than Blondes and Booze, I would not be here.
Well, I
I mean, Chris and I were really looking forward to talking to Thomas Ferrario. We really love him, but we are so glad you came on because we love you too.
Well, I appreciate it. I got to meet you at the Dogman Festival in Fort Worth, Texas, and it was great.
Yes.
It's great replacing the people to the podcast. It's always good doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, like I said, I'm it's my pleasure to be here. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have a lot of things going on. Do you want to just tell us real quick? Just start off by tell us what you have going on, because I know you have a project with Lady and Selene and all that good stuff too.
I do. So yeah, I'm a paranormal researcher, cryptid researcher from Western Pennsylvania. I'm right outside of Pittsburgh, right along the Chestnut Ridge. So that's where I do a lot of my research. And ever since I've been a kid, this area has been rife with things like UFO activity and hauntings and Bigfoot. And now recently we have dogmen sightings coming in. So like really everything you want as an investigator is right in and around here. So it's a great place to be. And as I've been doing this more and more, writing and doing conferences, again, like I said, I get to meet fine people like you. But a couple of years ago, I was introduced to Lady Ann whenever we were in Paris, Tennessee for the first Dogman conference put on Josh, and it was a rousing success. And she and I hit it off, and I thought, we are going to have to collaborate on a book, and we've collaborated on a book looking at werewolves and lycanthropy from a strictly psychological point of view. So we bring in accounts and we talk about different elements of being a werewolf and what all that entails. And then we kind of look and investigate what it means from a psychological level, because what is so interesting to me as a paranormal researcher is that we're all looking for that tangible proof. People say, does Bigfoot exist? And in actuality, to the people that have experienced this creature, or people that it's part of the collective unconscious, it's part of our culture. So does Bigfoot exist? Absolutely, because it sells our pizza. It does all this kind of stuff. So we know that it's part of who we are. So Ann and I decided that we were going to research into the psychology of why that happens. And I see Josh came aboard. Mr. Turner, how are you, sir?
Could be better, but we all could, right?
That's what Brandy said as well, too. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's a little under the weather. But, getting back to the Dogman conference, of all the conferences that I've done, that truly was by far the most illuminating, the most eye-opening. And we talk about, whenever you do podcasts, it's very important to have audience feedback and everything. And these conferences that I've attended that Josh had put on, some of the most intelligent individuals out there. So it really is great to see a community of people that want to get to the bottom of this stuff like we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a great conference. Everybody, we've all said it, before. We were at the second one. Unfortunately, we missed the first one, but the second one was great. So
it was.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the third one for sure.
Hint, Josh.
Yeah. I think we have made a decision on that. I'm going to say we're about 75% not going to do it now. Yeah.
Well,
there's always next year.
You can always.
We're not doing it.
Yeah.
I can't be this available. It's no.
Gotcha.
We kind of made a decision, and it was a group thing, and I would love to do another one. I would, but there's certain people that are just can't do it.
Yeah. So. Understand that. Totally understand.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking
Some
about
people make it impossible to do what you want to do. I understand that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say before we went on air. That's one of the things that we talk about, and there are many times within my tenure within the world of the paranormal that I thought about simply giving it up, right? Because I've lost people that I consider to be friends of mine, dear friends, people that have come over and stayed the night at my house so we could go investigating and everything. And there's a lot of people out there that don't see this as friendship or as loyalty, and they use you to jockey for some sort of imaginary position. And at the end of the day, you think, I really don't want to keep on doing this because I'm going to be hurt, and I don't want to be hurt. I want to go out there and investigate and all this stuff. But it is a sad world in which we live in. And I think it's hyper intensified in the paranormal field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that are just, I'm not.
Totally understand. Totally get
That's right. Yeah. I think that's the best response as well, too, is simply don't respond. Exactly. Because the more you respond, the more your enemies are going to take that and twist it around and everything. So I agree with Josh. I think the best thing to do is just say, whatever, we'll just know, a no comment type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So let's get into talk about. What do you want to talk about, Ryan? We got you for an hour here, so
yeah,
floor's yours.
Whatever kind of rabbit hole you want to go down. So right now, like I said, working on the book with Lady Ann, and in my opinion, I believe that the book is done. But Lady Ann tends to be a bit of a perfectionist, and she also goes through a series of overthinking and self-doubt. And she's in that period right now because I think that what she put out, what she has contributed and what have I contributed and we put together, I think it's a remarkable look at the world of the paranormal from a unique perspective. But she just keeps on working at it. So it was supposed to be out now. Hopefully it'll be out by summertime soon. But the other book that's in the process of being published right now is a book on Earthlights that's going to be published by Small Town Monsters. And that's called Lights from the Mist. And it goes with my experience dealing with these unexplained anomalies. I've experienced a lot around the Chestnut Ridge area. And then another book that I will have published here, hopefully by July, will be a family guide to the Ghost of Gettysburg.
Oh, wow. That'll be a good one. One. Have you been to Gettysburg quite a few times, or?
I have. So that's the reason why I wrote it. So I have 5 children. Now, 2 of them are grown and out of the house and everything like that. But whenever I took them there, whenever they were younger, 5 kids are very expensive. So I thought, I would love to be able to take my kids to these places, experience the history, go on a ghost hunt. But I also don't want to become bankrupt by doing such a thing. So I decided I was going to investigate a frugal family guide to this. So how to cut costs, how to save money, when's the best time to go, and what's some more reliable tours to go on if you want to go that route. So it was very interesting in writing this kind of a guide, and I think it's really needed because there's a lot of people out there, they watch TV and they see all these bells and whistles on these shows. We're going out and spending $500 on a spirit box and REM pods and everything. At the end of the day, they're carrying around so much equipment that they do not need. So I kind of try to narrow it down a little bit. And I thought, I said, if you have a couple kids, really the only thing you need is an EMF detector and a flashlight. You can download things on your phone and everything. Your kids want to be with you. You guys are, whenever you're going out there to Gettysburg, you're not making a show or anything like that. Just go out and have fun and don't worry about all the equipment. I'm sure that you guys agree as well.
Absolutely. We always tell people a lot of times, I personally don't even use equipment. Your body's your own best.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. I don't use equipment either. I do a lot of ghost hunts and ghost tours, and they push for you to. People want bells and whistles. They want to see lights flashing and everything, and I have went that route before, that kind of P.T. Barnum route, But at the end of the day, it was just fluff. There was nothing being done with this kind of stuff. So I'd much rather stick to the basics, tell people about the history of the area and then see what happens. I think that we get more evidence from those types of approaches than all the ones that include all the equipment.
Absolutely. I've been doing ghost hunting for a long time, and I call them toys, they're neat and whatever, but you can't say for a fact, oh, it's a ghost that's affecting this or that. But however, your body, your body better than anybody. So that is more where I would consider, more legit, I guess you could say.
Right. That's right. And your ears and your nose and your eyes, all the stuff that you have there. People don't take that into account because that's really what you're dealing with whenever you look at the environment. And if you ever get that hackle up your spine and you get that kind of flight or fight urge to go, that's usually whenever there's something around.
Absolutely. And we've all experienced it doing enough of these hauntings, going into enough of these haunted places that I know we've dealt with it. So.
So let me ask you, what would you say would be your top 5 places that you've investigated?
Ray County Museum is one big place. That's just kind of our home base. And honestly, oh, wow. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Ray County Museum. I would say a lot of them are private locations, private homes that we've done in the past.
Right. Yeah, the reason why I brought that up is because it has been my opinion, and it's been changing ever since I've been in this field, but it seems like whenever you go into locations that brand themselves that this is a haunted location, or this is an iconic location, and it's run by private ownership, those are the ones to look for, to be a little bit more wary about. There's a place here in Western Pennsylvania that's in one of those kind of categories. A lot of ghost hunters do shows there and everything. But you know what? I've been charting the development of that place over the years, and it changes every year. And it starts mimicking other places as well, too. Like if one place has, a creeper or something demonic, because that's a big thing right now. But whenever I started out this location, there was never any word about anything demonic. But now the whole place is filled with demons,
Right.
And that's my cue to get out, because we can, as investigators, ruin our reputations, right? We really can. People want to be on TV, and I understand that, right? There's always going to be an attraction, but they want to do what people do on television. And I will tell you this, and I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir. If you do not do it properly, you're going to end up looking like a fool, and you're going to lose all credibility. All credibility. Look what's happening right now with people that are very popular in the industry being the fakery and everything else, right? And whenever it comes to ghosts, like, so Bigfoot, sure, we would be pissed off if somebody fakes tracks and everything. But whenever it comes to ghosts and they're dealing with somebody's loved one that passed off, right, you can really inject trauma into a family by faking things. And we really have to be, wary of that whenever you're talking to somebody that says that I can communicate with the other side, or I'm going to provide answers to you, and then it is faked. I think that's one of the worst sins that we can commit within this industry.
Oh, sorry, I had my mute on. But yes, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Brandy, your 2 cents, your thoughts?
I've been to a lot of the locations that all the big names have been to, and some of them aren't as scary as they made them out to be, or the owners proclaim they are. But then I've been to these little places, that are really not on the map that have really got me. So, I mean, it's kind of a toss up for me. There's just so many places yet that I need to explore. I guess check with me in a year and see where I go from there.
Right.
No,
and Josh, you're not much of a ghost hunter, correct?
I do a lot of ghost work, but I don't
go to haunted locations or
because
that kind of thing.
I do, because I work at them.
Sure.
I mean, I've worked at a lot of seriously haunted places, but I try not to go there because I know that you get attachments. And I it's funny that we're talking about this, because just last night when I was driving through downtown Austin, I was like, there was this spot that it's notoriously haunted. And I drove by it, and I thought about maybe it would be a good place to go do an investigation, because we're getting a camera equipment together so that we can do these investigations. And one of the places that we want to go is one of the buildings downtown that's like, it's under a different management now, but it's like, it seems like every week it's got like some new name or some new management. And so I just want to go check it out. I don't want to say the name of it because then everybody will run over there and mess it up. But and everybody, of course, knows the Driscoll, and I've done some investigating there. But yeah, there's a lot of like locations. I just when I used to do a patrol, I haven't done patrol in a long time in security. That was like years and years ago. But when I used to run a route, I was a lieutenant at this one company, and I would only work there like 3 days a week. And then I worked at a nightclub on the weekends, and the nightclubs, all of those are haunted. And so this one route would take me to these buildings downtown. And one of them was the LBJ building. And that place is notoriously haunted. Now, here's the funny thing. I don't remember really ever having anything happen to me there. One time I thought I heard somebody like go like that to me, and there was nobody in the building. And so I thought that was odd. So when I talked to some of the other guards at that company, they said that they would see faces on the floor, like following them around. And it's like crazy stuff. Didn't happen to me. Another one is the Greer building, which is located right across the street from the state capitol. And there was stories that people would see this demonic black cat in the there was like it used to be a courtroom or whatever. They don't have it anymore. They moved it to another building, but years ago, that's what it was. And people would see it. And that room just sits empty now. It's kind of like a conference room that nobody uses. And so when I was working there, I walked in there and I felt something, but I didn't see anything. But the people that worked there were telling me all kinds of stories of shadows and this black cat that people would see. It wasn't like this humongous black cat, but it was bigger than a house cat. It was like the size of like a small cougar or something. And wow. And so, yeah, me and my brother worked there together, and that place was like, it was freaky, man. It was some weird stuff. But the worst was when I was doing patrol and I would have to go from building to building, and you're the only one in these buildings, and you got to go to multiple buildings. And so there was just one stretch where I called it Haunted Row, and one was at Lavaca, 504 Lavaca, I believe it was. These places, everybody knows they're haunted, so they can go. This other building, I don't want to say because I want to wait until I go up in there. So I am thinking about doing that once I get my equipment, and then I'm going to do some outdoor investigating too, which I've done a little bit already, started, but I've visited a lot of places where people have seen Dogman, Bigfoot, and supposedly demonic entities and ghosts. We visited them, but going in and trying to disturb it and say, hey, let's do this, or calling things out, no, I will not do that because that invites trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, somebody was talking about the Black Swan Hotel, and that's on my list in May. I've got the Black Swan and the Haunted Hill House back in they're coming up in May, so we'll find out.
If you go to San Antonio, there's a whole bunch of places that you should go. The Emily Morgan, we stayed there for 2 nights, and we had some weird stuff happen there, weird activity. My wife still thinks that I think she still thinks that we did it on purpose, but we were coming back from the coast. We were at Port Aransas. My friend has a place down there, and we were visiting the coast, and we decided, stop in San Antonio and stay for a couple nights and have some fun. It's the weekend. Why not, And so because we were coming back, and if I stayed another day at the beach, I would have been sunburned as hell. I just was already turning into, So I said, you know what, I can't do this. And so we decided to leave a day early. And I said, let's stretch it out for an extra day, stay 2 days in San Antonio. So we did. And Anthony chose the Emily Morgan because that's what came up on the app. Then I look up Emily Morgan because I said, I've heard of this place. I wonder if this place is the haunted, the hotel. There's that and the Manger, down in San Antonio.
Right.
Me and Ken have actually been to the Manger together, and we went and drank at the bar and hung out and just, to see if there was any activity, whatever. And so I was at the Emily Morgan, and I look it up, and it's the number 2 most haunted hotel in the country behind the Stanley Hotel. USA Today poll. Yeah, it was from a USA Today poll that said it was the second most haunted location, hotel-wise, in the country. And so I was like, dude, this is crazy. So we're over here staying in this haunted hotel, and I don't want to talk about everything. I'll wait till Ron leaves, and I'll tell the story. I don't want to Ron, you're
No,
you're the
that's
guy.
okay. No, we're all learning. This is awesome. I want to hear this.
Well,
Yeah,
I got lambasted last week in the comments because apparently I take over people's shows, and so I don't want to do that. I just want to be kind of,
Well, it's not their show, so if we ever thought anything, we would tell you. So it's
okay, well, I just want to make sure because I don't want to offend
us.
people with my
Well,
talking and whatever. Because
I have been to the Menger Hotel. I don't know, Josh, what your experience was, but the Menger Hotel didn't produce anything for me.
nothing for me. The Emily Morgan did, though. The Emily Morgan did for all of us. It was me, Nellie, Anthony, and of course Moshe or Tony. And so we were all there. And what ended up happening, I read on there because Nellie had specifically said, she goes, I don't want to stay in some haunted place. All right. I'm not in the mood for that, whatever. Because we had some weird stuff happen. And when we were on the trip the year before, we went through 14 different states. And we went all over the West, and we had to go out to California for a visit. And then so we decided to just go all the way up the West Coast, Pacific Coast Highway, everything, and then come back down. We went through Idaho and Utah and all these places. And so we had a really wonderful trip. And then we cut across the Midwest, and we went through like 5 different states, across Kansas, Colorado, whatever. We came down through Oklahoma and back into Texas. Well, we stayed in 3 different places that had weird stuff happen. And so my wife was just kind of burned out. She's like, the Fort Collins, weird thing. Oh man, I saw something like run into the room, and I was dead tired from driving, and I sat up, and I thought it was Scorpion, or Chris, this guy that was with us, and I look, and I was like, who is that? And then Nellie and them walk in with with their stuff or whatever. Nellie comes and they're carrying some stuff. I was so beat. I came up with 2 bags and just laid on the bed, tried to rest my back. And then I was like, I'm going to get up, and go help, whatever. But then I thought, well, that was quick. Somebody ran in. But then we only slept for about 4 or 5 hours, and then we were back up, which is fine for me. That's what I sleep anyway. But that place was weird, man. Like at one point, I thought I was dreaming, and I'd gotten up to go, use the bathroom. And I was like, did I just dream that, or did that even happen? Because I don't think that was real. I was like dreaming it or something. And while I was in there, somebody was shaking the door handle. So I thought that was weird, but it was like a dream, I guess, but then I couldn't tell if it was like a dream or if it was one of those out of body things. But when we were at the Emily Morgan, weird thing happened. We left to go down to the Strip, and go. It's right there across from the Alamo. So we went, and there's all these places, So we went to this one restaurant. We like to go on the boardwalk. So we went out there and we ate and we hung out for a little while, and we were going back to the hotel, and the phone, we come back and the phone is off the hook and turned around, which was really weird. And the tub was running. So I was like, what the hell? And so at one point, Nellie had gone to get some ice, and I was laying on the bed. I was tired. I was watching TV. I don't even know what it was on. Probably just zoning out. And the boys were downstairs talking to a bartender, and we're getting actual stories from this bartender about some stuff down in South Texas. So they fielded a few stories that night. So I was upstairs, and I just remember hearing like a knock on the door. And then when I thought, well, whoever's, it's got to be one of the people that I'm with, they have a key. And I said, come on in, and, whatever. And then nothing happened. And I said, did you forget your key? Nobody answered. So finally I got up. And when I got up, I opened the door. There was nobody there. The tub comes on. So when Nellie came back to the room, I said, did you not? I knew she didn't, but I had to ask. And she's like, no. So I didn't tell her. But then I told her, I said, well, the tub came on again, because I figured it's probably going to come on again in the middle of the night. And oddly enough, when I was staying in Fort Brown down in Brownsville, which is now a hotel, it has burn marks on the scorch marks on the walls, because it was burned, it was a fort, and there was a tragedy that happened there. So that happened to us one night when we were down there in Brownsville, way down in South Texas. Like the water kept coming on, in the middle of the night, and then something pulled the blankets off of me. So there's some freaky stuff, so this is the second time I'd stayed in a hotel with the water. And I told Nellie, I said, look, I'm going to tell you the truth. I said, this place is haunted. It is. We didn't do it on purpose, and we weren't trying to. And she was like, that's fine, as long as it doesn't mess with me. But a bunch of weird stuff happened. Like in the middle of the night, the TV came on by itself. And then we find out that the floor we were staying on was basically, used as a hospital. It was a hospital. That used to be a hospital.
Wow.
But that floor that we were staying on was used as the I forgot what it's called, infirmary, where people when they're killed, they keep them up there, like the morgue, slash infirmary, whatever. But that's what that particular floor was all for. That's what it was. And so when I told the story on the show, a guy got in touch with me and he said that he was at the Emily Morgan, and I told the story on the show, and he said that he witnessed somebody like being wheeled across the elevator lobby on a gurney, and I was like, "There's no way," that's not. He's like, I was wondering why that would be, and this guy was like from Iowa or something. He was not from Texas, and so he was in San Antonio to visit San Antonio, and he said that him and his wife, they were into the paranormal, and so they stayed there, but he thought that maybe it was just like, a reenactment or something because it looked so real. But his wife kind of tricked him and told him, okay, well, yeah, this is actually a very haunted hotel. That's probably what you saw. So she likes my shows. He messaged me and I told him, I said, you probably saw something because a lot of people died on that floor. And that's the exact floor that I was on. So, yeah, There was a lot of weird stuff. The elevator had stopped at one point in the middle of the whatever, and then it came back on. And the people downstairs in the lobby that ran the hotel, they said, yeah, that particular floor, when people get in and off the elevator, and I said, it's because it's haunted. And they said, yeah, all of the people there believe it. There's no doubters there. Nobody.
Right. Wow.
I saw an interesting comment. I want to go back to that, Krista. Somebody said, if you haven't heard it, ask Ron to tell us about the Burning Witch investigation.
I did star that.
What? That sounds like a freaky story. Just like Josh was just telling us about all this. Now we got burning witches. This is turning into quite the creepy show.
Right. And this is one of my favorite stories because even if you're a skeptic, it's a hard kind of story to separate from, okay? And I've tried to many times because even thinking about the story now makes me a little uneasy. But we live in an area here in Western Pennsylvania that was part of the French and Indian War. So there have been battles around here since the mid 1700s. George Washington, before he became president, earned his high regard fighting in this area. Mm-hmm. So there have been people around here for a while, and there's been a lot of violence around here for a while. But this story goes back to right after the French and Indian War. It was actually right after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. But this area was still the frontier. So there was an area called Livermore, which was a small town along the Conemaugh River, and people would, raise families there, and crops and trap and fish and all that kind of stuff. But what was essential in these particular times is somebody that knew their way around medicine. You needed to have a midwife. You needed to have somebody to give you advice about when to plant and when not to plant. So a witch, for all intents and purposes, was important, whether you admit it or not. This is a very Christian culture, but the idea of having somebody with knowledge kind of outweighed the complete piety of a particular area. So that's what happened. This was 1789. A small town was coming up on the frontier in Western Pennsylvania, and naturally they had a witch, but she didn't live within the community. She lived right out of the community, and they would go to her whenever they needed something. So as it happened, in the early spring of 1789, people would call her for helping in birthing babies, and the child would be stillborn, right? And animals would start dying. The crops were not coming in. So the people gathered around. They said, there must have been an error in our way. The only way we can think about what's going on is this is a curse from God. It's because we turned from him and we are now dealing with a witch. So what do we need to do? And the idea of excommunication of somebody that is evil was very part of our culture, right? I mean, this is only less than 100 years from the Salem witch trials. So the idea that, especially if it's a woman, they need to be basically destroyed because you don't want to have any remnants of these people around at all. So up in Salem, everybody was burned or was hanged except the one, Giles Corey, and he was crushed to death. So the idea of burning a witch is not a common thing. Actually, it's pretty unknown of in America. You know, this was a European thing. But the people gathered together and they thought, you know, what is the best way to do this? And they come up with the idea of burning the witch. Now, you have to remember, too, that this is an area of Scotch-Irish habitation. And the last witch that was burned to death in Scotland was like 1735. So this being 1789, somebody may have actually seen that event that was there, or at least they heard it from their parents or grandparents. So they decided that that's what was going to happen. They grabbed the witch. They took her and they set her on fire. And as the flames leapt up about her, it's claimed that she put a curse on the area. And she said, 100 years from this date, I'm going to send enough water to quench these flames. And then in 1889, May 31st, the Johnstown flood came through and destroyed the entire town. So that is the legend there. And we know going back at least 100 years, this area was called Satan's Seat. So there was an idea that there was black magic going on here and everything. So I thought this would be a great place to take people on a tour. I said before the show, I've been a teacher for most of my adult life. And one time, you know, the faculty heard that I did, you know, I was interested in the paranormal and said, will you take us on a ghost hunt for Halloween? I said, sure, you know, that'd be great. So I thought I'll take them down there and tell them this story and everything. And there's a small graveyard there. And one of the survivors of the Battle of Little Bighorn was buried there. So I had a lot of good historical stories to tell. And then I told them about the witch, and they started to get all scared and everything like that. And then things became a little bit out of control. We went investigating, walking a path and everything like that. But before long, these orbs started to manifest. And one orb went over one of the teacher's faces and just kind of blurred out her vision. Now, we couldn't see this with the naked eye, but we could see it on camera, on digital, and multiple cameras was seeing this orb over her face. And even as she moved, it was still there. It would sometimes, another orb would join it and sometimes move around as if it was evaluating you. I mean, it was a very scary situation and far past my pay grade. But then the girl who had the orb over her face claimed that she was getting a headache. So I thought, you know, this might be the time to get out of here. So we hurried up and left, and it was about 3 miles back to our car. We were pretty far away. And as we get closer to where our cars are parked, we see these orbs start jumping back and forth across the path. This is something that I never really had experienced before, and one of the things that really kind of prompted me to write this book about Earth lights. But these were just small pinpoints of light. Some were blue, some were red, some were orange, and some were white, and they were just back and forth across the trail. Until we got close enough that we could actually have reached out and touched them, and then they just went off. But what is now getting a little bit more frightening is whenever they went off, we start hearing the sounds of women's voices coming from the woods. Now, you couldn't hear speech. It had a pattern of speech. It had a particular cadence, but it was women's voices that were slowly rising to almost this crescendo, which caused everybody to run. I mean, there was no chivalry there. Everybody just kind of took off. And as I was running up the hill back to my car, I felt this tug on me, and I reached up and something had pulled the scarf from around my neck. And again, I've never experienced anything like this in my entire life. I was spooked. I was scared. I was afraid about, my fellow coworkers. You know, I got them in this predicament. What can I do now? So we get it back to the cars. You know, everybody's out of breath. The one girl said that she feels this burning pain, and she pulls up her shirt and she has the scratch marks. You know, everything that you could have in a classic type of haunting was there, right? Mm-hmm. And so we decided that we were going to, go to a restaurant nearby and just kind of talk. kind of decompress, I suppose. And we went there, and it was really awkward. Nobody said much. Everybody was kind of in a state of shock. So we sat there. We said our hurried goodbyes, and then it was time to go back home. And when I get to my house, I slowly open the door, and then I jump back because I notice inside my house there's a light. Okay. And I know that I didn't put any lights on. But as a skeptic, you have to understand, too, I have children. So before they went to their grandmother's, maybe they turn on a light, right? So I take a couple deep breaths and I go in the house, and it was not a light. It was all 4 burners on my stove that were on. And it was a gas. So these are flames, right? Which is interesting because we were looking for a witch that was burned. So, again, I run back outside. Again, this is something that I definitely do not want to deal with. But I also don't want to sleep in my car that night. So I'm going to have to get back into this house. So I muster enough courage. I go in. I turn on all the lights in the house. And I go to hang up my coat. And the scarf that was pulled from around my neck was on the coat rack.
Holy smokes.
Yep. So, yeah, it was as if it was to me, it was like a warning. It was kind of like, what happened today? You might have went a little bit too far, but let this be a warning because, like, I also know where you live. That kind of a thing.
Right.
And I've tried to explain this away. All those teachers that I was with that night, there was about a dozen of us total. Nobody talks to each other nowadays. They don't talk. I wrote to the one and I asked her if she would want to talk about the event because I was writing a book about it. And she said, I do not want to discuss the event whatsoever. So a lot of times people have these incredible encounters and these experiences that they cannot explain. And rather than, deal with it or try to interact with it to make it make sense, they just shrug it off and they tend to forget it, right? I think that happens a lot. And I don't blame them because if I was not in the world of the paranormal before that, I probably would not have still been in it now. Because, again, I try to explain it away, but it was just one of the most odd experiences I've ever had.
Oh, absolutely. Scary, too, especially, like your stove burners. That's nothing to play with.
No.
That's right. I thought about that as well, too. Not to change the subject, but I wanted to point out that somebody on there, I believe the name was Plymouth, they were talking about the puck wedgie. Over the summer, just this last summer, I happened to be able to go up and do some investigation up at the Hockabuck Swamp up there in the Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts. And I know Josh was saying that he likes to investigate things outside as well, too. And I'd much rather be outside than confined within a property. Yeah. But this area up there is rich with UFOs and, demonic activity. And the puck wedgie, which is a very interesting little character, one of my favorites, that is very close in similarity. It's very similar to the European elf or the fairy. It has those same kind of connotations. But that place up there, the Bridgewater Triangle, as soon as you enter it, it gives off a very, very weird vibe. And you were talking about that earlier there, Chris, about whenever you go out there, you don't necessarily have to rely on gear. Sometimes your body will just tell you. And I will tell you, from the time I entered that area to the time I left, I had a feeling of foreboding the entire time.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. I totally get it. I know that feeling, Yeah. And that's being out in the woods and in haunted locations. Both.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's odd whenever you go into the Bridgewater Triangle because it's not like the Chestnut Ridge here in Pennsylvania that's very wooded and very inaccessible, because you go into the Bridgewater Triangle and there's like a high school there and there's like a strip mall and, 7-Elevens and all this kind of stuff. But it's also very weird and kind of Stephen King-like because you'll have like an ATM across the street, and then like right across from that is an old cemetery that dates from the 1600s. It's that kind of juxtaposition of the modern and the formation of America itself. Right. So And also there's Native American sites up in there as well too. So there's all this different energy flowing in there, and it's really just a strange area. And I'm hoping to get back there again as well. A part of the book, part of the deal with the book that I'm writing for Small Town Monsters is they're actually putting a companion piece together that's going to be a documentary involving Earthlings as well too, that we've been filming. So I'm hoping to get up there before the end of summer to do some filming up there about the Earthlings.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. You mentioned puckwudgies.
Yeah.
And you know, a good friend of mine, she actually had a puckwudgie encounter in northern Missouri here, and
wow.
Didn't know what it was. And we met up. We went to high school together. We were childhood friends, and we met up. And she said, "You know, I got something to tell you, and I've never told anybody. And this is, 20, 25 years ago. We were having dinner here just 6 months ago, and she said, I seen these weird creatures come out of a tree."
Yeah.
And,
wow.
Yeah, and so she was telling me about. She didn't know what they were. And she said they came out on all fours, but then they got up on twos and walked away. And she was in a tree stand. She was deer hunting. And she was afraid to. She was supposed to be back down at camp, at a certain time. And she was afraid to get down out of the tree, which probably is a good thing, that she didn't. But so anyway, her ex-husband, everybody had to come looking for her, and they're like, why didn't you come? And she actually lied and told them that she dozed off because she didn't want to tell them she's seen these creatures come out of a tree. So honestly, She had no idea what it was. So I'm looking up all kinds of things from trolls to, and showing her pictures. And when I sent her a puckwudgie, she goes, "That's it," because she was like a porcupine looking, anteater looking something, So and I ended up finding a puckwudgie and sending it to her, and she said that was it. So that was pretty incredible.
It is. And what's very interesting about that, because we like to connect dots here and see if there's a precedent or anything regarding this. So whenever you talk about puckwudgie, that is a creature that is part of the vernacular of the Wampanoag people up there. But that doesn't mean that they don't exist elsewhere, right? That is their name for that particular character. But if you go over to Ireland and Scotland and parts of England, they have a creature over there as well that often takes on the personification of a hedgehog. These things that are covered in spines, yet they are part of the fairy world. And if you look around the world,
Sorry, Ron, go ahead. I was agreeing with you. Sorry.
I was just going to say, if you go around the world, there are these creatures that match the same description, on all the continents where there's people. And that really, as an investigator, makes me wonder, because they're separated by time and space, right? They had it a part of their culture before they had European contact. And that's what makes it so interesting as we go down these rabbit holes together, that we see this continuation of these same type of motifs and archetypes around the world.
Yeah.
Ron, you were on my show a couple times. Once you were on the live stream, I think, and then we did like a 2 or 3 parter where we talked about just about everything, and fairies and everything else came up. And I remember I was looking through the archives. We're loading them onto Rumble now. And nice. I saw your episodes on there, and it was like fairies and I said, I need to go back and listen to that just so I can hear Ron talk about it, because I don't know if anybody knows this. Ron, you're very underrated. I mean, very underrated. You're one of the unsung heroes of this field, and you're one of my favorites, dude. I've read a couple of your books, really good. I mean, it's crazy. I don't know how. Me and Ken Gerhardt have talked about this. Like literally, him, and Barton were on the phone one day, and we were talking about you. And I was like, that punk owes me 50 cents for that drink at the freaking conference, man. I'm joking. No, what I said, Ron is like, he's not getting the credit he deserves. And Ken said, oh man, he goes, it's bad. How bad that Ron should be way up, and Barton said the same thing. I mean, we all are impressed with your work. I loved listening to you talk. And that night we talked on air and off there when we talked, and it was just it's always an honor and pleasure to talk to you and the things you have to say. Because like when you were talking about the hedgehog, you're the only person that's ever, I thought I was the only one that ever read that. But there was a lady in Britain who was doing a Dogman map And I used to look at that, and she was called the cloaked hedgehog. I don't know if she's still around, but that cloaked hedgehog, that's an actual fae. That's a fae thing that they do.
It is.
And so people don't realize that it's part of the. Actually, I believe that the hedgehog is the Sealy court. It's not.
It is very good, my friend. That's correct.
Yeah. So when you said that, I mean, I have a pretty good knowledge, and of course, when me and Ron talk, it's really cool because we'll just talk, and he knows so much. And so I'm like, finally, somebody that, it's like when I talk to Barton, it's like those are my people. I can talk to you guys or the ladies here, my wife's we're all very, because like I was at the gym this morning and there was this guy who came up to me, he watches my show, and shout out to him. Griff, shout out to you, nice guy, African-American dude. And he follows my show, and he came up to me and he says, man, good show. I was watching the Vampire Confessions, and we were talking about different people that he wanted to go and look into or whatever. And I knew you were our guest tomorrow. So if you're in this chat or whatever, what's up? But anyway, I told him, I said, come and check us out when Ron, Murphy's on the show, because he's a wealth of knowledge and he won't disappoint. And even now you just, you taught the audience something. A lot of them probably didn't know what that was, because like I said, you're the first person that's ever said that.
Well, I do appreciate that very, very much, Touch, because this is coming from people that I admire in the field even before I got started in the field. So I greatly appreciate that. And I do take it seriously as well. So I won't give out any kind of information unless I kind of cross-checked it, because a lot of people just put things out there because they heard it as a rumor. But if I'm going to write something down, I look at it, almost from an academic point of view, because what happens if somebody wants to use my books for research and they bring up what I talk about up and it's not true, I don't want that to happen to anybody, and that would hurt my credibility as well too. So much about this field is reputation. So I try to be as thorough as I can whenever we talk about this kind of stuff. But we could talk the whole evening. What Josh said about the idea of these fairies being separated by court, because a lot of this stuff was developed, in the Middle Ages and the early Renaissance, whenever courtly behavior was very popular. So they saw the fairies that were less mean, let's put it that way, less as the Sealy court, which was the court of the blessed, and then the unsealy court is the ones you had to be worried about. But usually, whenever you deal with any kind of entity from the Sealy court, they're usually so in tune with nature, it's very difficult to differentiate between an entity and an actual an animal, if you will, because they're so tied up within the natural world. These are the fairies that make your garden grow. These are the fairies that, tell bees where there's honey, and all those kind of romantic tropes that go along with it. But I think that's a very important thing, because a lot of people, whenever they're out in the woods, they will experience things that they can't necessarily explain. And I ask them, were you afraid? And a lot of times they weren't. I mean, they were shocked by what they saw. So it's leading me down this trail that I'm thinking that a lot of things that we talk about, Dogman and Bigfoot and all this great multitudes of animals, is it possible that what these creatures are manifestations of the fairy realm? Either they're taking on these physical forms, or somehow their frequency is interjecting within our mind what they want us to see them appearing as.
That we did a show on that. We had someone who gave us a story about a dog man, but it was also a little people story, and it was a lady. Started out with her, and then her husband Brad got involved. And he didn't want to be involved at first, and then he started telling me and Tony all kinds of stuff, But it started out with this little, as we say in Spanish, duende, and it was like moving around the house and doing all this naughty stuff. And then they saw, or one of the children saw, and I can't remember, the listeners of the show probably remember it better than I do, because once I go from that, I got to go to the next story and memorize it, and then go there, and you just keep putting it together. But I just remember the cliff notes real quick. It was like this werewolf-looking creature started showing up. One of the children saw it, and they got freaked out. And I thought, how odd that there was this little monitos, little duende, And then eventually they saw this thing in the den, and it looked like it had melted, like a candle, like a giant candle about 2 foot tall. And what was breaking out of it was like this little elf-looking creature.
Wow.
Well, it wasn't a werewolf. It was that
Right.
thing pretending to be. That's my opinion. I don't know what else it could have been.
Right.
But one of the ladies said, well, we saw it independently from this little dwarf-looking thing because they saw him at the same time. And I said, yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. They have relatives, you know. And it gets even more convoluted because the Sealy court, which is the clean court, and the unsealy court, which is the unclean court, they're not only are they like they're pretty much the same thing. It's just the less mean ones and the really mean ones. But the problem with this is that they're all related. So if you were to hurt one of the really mean ones, he's a little turd. He can go and get the even the ones that are considered to be good guys that help your strawberries grow and your plants nectar, whatever. He can go and be like, well, you hurt my cousin. And I'm like, yeah, but Bilbo was a jerk. I don't care. You hurt my cousin. So I got to fight you because you're a human and we're gnomes. And so they'll do stuff to you. And it'll turn just like that because one of them, like there'll be 10 of them and one of them's a bad one. And that one will make all the other ones bad and they'll do bad to you in your household. And what you once thought was your friends are now your enemies because of one bad apple that poisoned everybody.
That's right.
So, very
to piggyback on that, yeah, that's actually a hallmark of various cultures around the world. So again, the Pukwudgie, same thing. The Pukwudgie at one time was the giver of culture. You know, it would help out people, and then they had wars with humans. So that bond has been broken. And if you look at Hawaii as well, too, they have the Menehune that were also they taught the Hawaiians how to fish. You know, they taught them how to bring, make lakes and everything like that, artificial lakes. And then one time there was this disagreement, and now they are your enemies. And we could, forever. We could trace this around the world as well too. Whenever you have Homo florensis there in Indonesia, right, the little hobbit creature, the Dutch people were reporting these things since the late 1600s. And again, at one time they lived in harmony with people. Something pissed them off. Now all of a sudden they are abducting children in the night, and these kind of things. These kind of things happen. But don't you also think that it's a great spotlight on human proclivity to mess with things that they don't understand? This is kind of a warning, I think, that these creatures represent, nature in its undomesticated, it's chaotic, right? And then we go in there and we thought, well, we can change it, we can make it better, or we can subjugate it in some way. And whenever all that falls apart, then we are left at the mercy of the creatures that go bump in the night. I think that's a great testimony to the idea that some things are better left alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what it is too, Ron? There's like a malicious, malevolent, like underlying current of resentment from these others, these beings, and I think that they'll be okay, to a degree, as long as they're placated to some degree. But it takes the slightest little slight every time. I had a Filipino friend, and she was talking about how she was a friend of mine's girlfriend, but she was telling me. He said, these things, what they do, it just takes a little something or another to set them off, and then they're off and running, and they'll do all kinds of horrible, mischievous things. And I didn't really know her that well, and it was the first time that somebody had ever told me anything about little people in the Philippines. The Philippines is really just a conglomeration of islands that's just pushed together. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. And so to get from one place to the next, you ferry everywhere. And she was telling me, she goes, some islands are infested with them and some are a little better because they won't cross the water. And then they believe this too. In the Philippines, they believe that these beings can actually, they have to go through tunnels underneath the ocean. And so if they're angry enough, they will follow you, but it's usually like once you leave one island, you're okay. But if they're mad enough, they will follow you. They'll take the time to go or whatever, but they can't cross over the top of the seawater. But and not all the islands are connected. So there's stories there, according to what my friend, he was telling me that, he grew up there. He said there are stories that in the Philippines where people will move all the way from one part of the country to another island because they're being chased by these, most of the time invisible, but sometimes visible little gnome-like creatures because they're angry. And so people from north to south, south to north, because the Filipinos, a lot of them, especially the older generations, they know which islands are connected under the water. So you have to go to an island that's not connected to get away from these little things because they're so vindictive and mean, and they will follow you and hound you.
Right. So, and again, you're dealing with folklore and an oral tradition that predates, white settlers. But in the lore of Europe, whenever you deal with supernatural entities, whether they be fairies or even vampires, one of the ways to keep them at bay is to cross running water. Apparently, these beings can't, for whatever reason, see it as some sort of boundary between worlds. And oftentimes we see in cultures and in belief systems that the water does represent that veil between two different worlds, right? So we do see that very often, but that's very curious. I'd never heard that from that neck of the woods there, Todd. So you've definitely educated me on that. But yeah, I find it interesting that they are not able to cross water there as well too, because that's so part of their culture. That you would think that if they were going to make that up, that would not be an element that they would look at, because crossing water is just who they are.
Sure.
Yeah. The people that live in these, like in Hawaii, same thing. There's like the Menehune, they have like different enclaves. Like on the Big Island, they have a certain area that they tend to congregate. And I can't remember if it was like northeast or southeast, because I had a guy on my show, Kevin Panay, who we did like a 2 or 3 hour show, and it was like broken up, it was on the podcast. And he talked about the Shark King and all these different legends. And these little people there are very, very aggressive and violent, and they don't like humans at all. And it goes back to like King of Mao or whatever did something, he made him mad or something, because what I think it was is when they were on the road to conquest, the Big Island, they conquered all the other islands, and they were island hopping and basically invading in their war canoes. And of course, eventually it was all, settled, and one tribe had conquered everyone else. And I think that what they did was, I think it was on the island of Maui, where they killed some princess or something, and don't quote me, but I think that's what it was. And the little people were very fond of her and her little kingdom, and they were treated like royalty there. They were supplicated with fruit and different things. And this big king comes and he just kills her, has her beheaded, and destroys her land. And then they were mad because the new people didn't give a crap about them and didn't pay attention to them. And so ultimately, that was the beginning of the end for everybody. Everybody had a problem with them after that. And they say even to this day, when they build highways and things, there's always accidents, people having all kinds of problems. And I've had 2 very good friends of mine live in Hawaii. One of them, when he returned from Hawaii, within 6 months, he took his own life.
My.
Very bad. It was one of my best friends. And then Tony's stepdad lived there for a long time. And he still to this day believes that the attachment that he has, and he's been trying to get rid of it for years, and that's because he won't accept Christ. That's what I tell him. He doesn't want to believe it. I said, whatever. He keeps trying to get rid of it every other way, but it's not going to work. But he believes that he got it when he was there in Hawaii, and he brought it to the mainland. But there's a lot of legends like that, and now the same thing is true. Like there are certain packs of little people, they won't cross over the ocean. They won't cross the salt water. But some of them, though, can shapeshift into sharks. So you'll never see them as anything but a shark, but that's convenient because you can't tell, shark, It's like, oh, look, there's a shark. No, that's not. That's one of the Menehune. No, well, it looks like a shark to me. Well, that's because you're not
underwater. You're like, yeah, it's underwater. How are you supposed to know?
Yeah, exactly. The giant hammerhead shark, it's it's a Menehune.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Ron, it is 4 minutes.
I know.
1 hour and 4 minutes now.
Yeah, I apologize. So just to give a little bit of background, I wasn't originally supposed to be on here tonight, and you guys had called me up, and I so desperately wanted to be on this show, but unfortunately I could only do an hour because I have to get up early tomorrow for my real job. So guys, thank you so much. I'm very flattered to be on here. I'm glad Josh was able to come on here as well too and elucidate us with all of his great stories as well. And please think about having me back on again.
For
and
sure.
I will arrange
Oh,
it so I'll be able
yes.
to spend more time with you guys.
Absolutely. We'll figure this is what, March. Maybe we'll figure sometime in May. That'll work
I
for
hope
you.
so. Yeah, I hope so. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys. It was a very stimulating conversation, and I'm looking forward to jumping back in again with you guys.
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
And
And
thanks
everybody
for
stay
listening as
tuned.
well,
Don't
guys.
go anywhere because show's not over yet.
And Ron, hey,
Bye, Ron.
he's gone. Oh well, I was going to
Go.
tell him one last thing, but he's gone.
Oh, gotcha. He's definitely a wealth of information too.
Oh, he is. I love talking to Ron. Ron's a good guy, and Ron, very loyal friend too. Like, you know, when stuff was going on, you know, people went to him, and he was like, "Go stick it, dude." I mean, he's not gonna participate in that kind of mess, you know. And he's a guy that appreciates things that you do for him, or you know, and that's the kind of guy that, you know, and I appreciate what he's done for me.
Yeah.
So it's a mutual respect thing there, and that's how I look at, you know. I mean, you have to these days. You got to kind of judge people. You know, it's just so hard because there's just so many people that are out for themselves, and the good people have to stick together. There's no other way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, he definitely stepped up to the plate. We were actually supposed to have Thomas Ferrario on tonight, and that was about Marley Woods. It's Missouri's kind of Skinwalker Ranch, and he had he didn't know it when he scheduled, and he found out that he had to have surgery. He actually had surgery today. So keep him in your prayers, and we are going to reschedule. So it's just he's got to get some healing time in. So I understand that, and he was sorry.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
however,
he
we
just
have
didn't know.
Ron and we have you, Josh. So there we go.
That's right.
So if I talk today, am I going to get in trouble? Because I don't know if I want to talk.
This is Brandy and I's show. It's nobody else's.
All right.
Right. And I'm really not feeling very well today. So, I mean, you know, the stories that you're telling tonight are just giving me kind of like the creepies, you know? And, you know, and I'm digging it. You know what I mean? I'm loving these. You got any more of those?
I got plenty. What do you guys want to talk about? I got one that is a holdover from the show that we did on Tuesday. And that one, there was something that I had talked to a friend of mine from my hometown. He reached out to me. And he said, "Hey, do you remember your Uncle Sal?" That's what they call the guy that saw the dog man with me when we were kids. His name is Daniel. His family, his dad, I always called him my Uncle Sal, and I just talked to him like he was my cousin. We're not really related, but I consider them to be family. I lived with their family for a while too. They're really nice people. All of his siblings and his parents, we're all still friends to this day. Very, very good people. So close to him. His older brother and me are real tight. But one of my friends said, "You remember your cousin? You know, I remember your cousin one time at a party talking about vampires." And I didn't remember when he started talking about it at first. This guy Steven's a friend of mine. Steven said, "Y'all were talking about it, and it was your Uncle Sal, which would be Daniel's dad, had said something about it." And I said, "Oh," and it came back to me. He messaged me after the vampire, not the vampire one, the werewolf one, where I said something about vampires. So that would have been the live stream, I think 218, which was Werewolf Confessions or something like that. We were going to call it Confessions of a Werewolf, but it just sounded kind of corny or something. So Anthony,
was that the one that you did late at night? Because I actually watched that one. Yes.
We ended up
like
with
5 hours or
590 people in
something.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Greg Tuttle came on, and then after that, it was Paul Sinclair in the middle of the night. We were just talking.
Yes.
Yeah, that one. So my buddy Steven calls me up, and he says, he said, I hadn't heard from him forever, and he says, "Hey man, there was a story I wanted to tell you. I watched your show. A lot of people from my home do." And I said, "Well, let me get you. Let me see what I can do about remembering that story." So I got the information, and so here's what happened when my what I call my uncle, who literally saw the dog man the night that I did. He came outside and saw it. Very brave guy. Did not balk or act like he was afraid at all. If he was afraid, he didn't show it. And for somebody that saw this thing, that was the second time he had seen this thing. The first time it was like smoke materializing into a wolf. So that he's seen it twice. And so he told me, he says, he believed that vampires exist because when he was working as a butcher in Elgin, Texas, he said that there were these two old guys when he worked there for like 20, 30 years. It was a long time. And he said when he started there as a young man, and he worked there until he was like 40 or something like that. And then he hurt his leg real bad because a slab of meat hit his leg, messed it up. And so he was working as a butcher, and he said that they would slaughter hogs and they would bring the hogs there, whatever. And they were told to keep the blood, basically on the counter, because there were these guys that would come and take it, which I thought was extremely odd, to say the least. And so he said that, I asked him this, and he said that there were these two old guys, and he thinks that they were Polish, by a Polish descent. They had like these last names or whatever. And he said that when they would come in the store, he said, you felt like your skin crawl. And when he was a newbie, new guy, one of the butchers there told him, he said, these guys, they're really, really old men. They're in their 90s. He goes, because this guy that was working there was already in his 40s. And he goes, they've been coming here since I was a teenager, since I worked here. So this is the guy that was training him. So he said that these dudes had to be in their 90s. And though Sal worked there for like, I think 27 years, 25 or some, I don't remember how long he said it was. It was over 25 years. So it wasn't quite 30, but it was over 25. So I'm estimating about 27, 28 years. And so he said that in all that time, they never changed. And that they would come up there regularly and get cow's blood and pig's blood, and they would drink it like they were ravenous. They would drink it in front of them right there. Like they would bring a hog in to slaughter, and they would take the warm blood or they would drop it off and say, save the blood for us. And they'd come in there and they would drink it.
Yeah.
I kid you not, man. And he said they would just drink it straight, like out of a cup. And he said that it was vile to watch. He said it was disgusting. But he said, it was like he got used to it, because they would come in there every week and do it. And he said, he goes, the same two guys were doing this for, 26, 27, whatever it was, years, and they were in their 90s when this guy met them. And so how old were these guys? And so he said that he asked that question one day, and the owner told him, don't ask questions like that. Just, and he was like, dude, they had to be 120, 130, and they never changed. They just looked like old guys, but he said they looked like they were in the 60s or 70s, That's a weird story. So that was really weird. And it was reminded to me by somebody who had heard my best friend, who I saw the Dogman with, tell that story at a party. But I remember my Uncle Sal telling that story to me, when I was young, and he would talk about it because it really freaked him out. It was something that was weird he had to deal with regularly.
Right.
Yeah. I've had what's called blood stew before. I know. I had to try it. But let me tell you that it's something with a texture thing. It doesn't feel right. It's gross. It's kind of salty, and it's just something that I don't enjoy. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. So I can't see drinking it straight from the animal when it's still warm. I couldn't even imagine. That's just
abomination. And then of course I did that show with that guy, Joel, talking about being a vampire or whatever. What was crazy was some of the information that I was given was so disturbing. Like, it was just, I couldn't even talk of a quarter of it really. And I could give you the main talking points, but it was a lot of information to take in. And the guy talks pretty fast, and he was, 5.5 hours of us talking. About his vampirism and all this other stuff, and a lot of it was stuff that I couldn't talk about on the show. But there were some things that they did, which was just there were people that would come to the Temple of Shay, which is the one he was at, and then the other one was called Gara, but they would go to these temples as willing victims, and they would let them drink their blood. And he said some of these people would be like, they would get so sick from all their body losing so much blood that they didn't always make it.
Wow.
And so it was crazy. He said that these people were exsanguinated, and these people were stupid enough to just come up there and let them do it. I think that what it was too is that they told him, oh, well, they showed him some of their little abilities and said, I can make you into this. So he said some of them he knew were being tricked into thinking that they were going to become vampires, and instead they just became dinner. Oh. And they would drink their blood. And then when they would, this is what he said, when they would die, which didn't happen very often, but he said some of them would die, they wouldn't try to kill them technically because they wanted them to come back.
Sure.
So it was something that was like what he called a party foul. You don't kill them because you want them to go get replenished and come back. Because it's not that easy just to find somebody who's willing.
Right.
So when they got one of them would die, they would always blame the last person that did it. So that way there wouldn't this greed thing. They'd be like, okay, I'm good. Go, you drink your fill, because if that person dies, then you're going to be punished. And he said, when you get lashed with hell flame, it's not a fun thing. It burns into your soul. And that was their punishment. So he said that the higher ups were very, very particular about that sort of behavior. But he said that the most gruesome thing was, he goes, somebody's going to die or they're dead. And then you turn them over to a pack of werewolves and watch them eat them bone to bone. He said that when they crunch their bones, it sounds like, your joints popping times 10, Oh, wow. I heard somebody that told me that they heard a dog man like eating a cow. And it was like the noise sounded like corn nuts being crunched. They were eating everything, the bones, everything. And he said that the werewolves were very much like that. I mean, like they eat everything, head to toe, the skull, everything. There's nothing left. He said that, people go missing, they're never seen again. And his exact words were, well, there's no body, no crime. So, they would just do that, and it was like.
That makes sense why these bodies aren't found then.
Yeah. And it wasn't one of those things where people could go, oh, well, that's the last place that person said they were going to go exsanguinated by vampires, because nobody's saying that. And he said, and typically we chose people who didn't have a lot of family, or they were disenfranchised. Nobody cared about them. That's the kind of people that they were dealing with.
Right.
So yeah, that was just it was hard to hear. It was hard.
I watched a TV show, and it was about vampires, but they had blood parties. Have you heard about those?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, that's some sick stuff, man. Like.
Because we have like authors like Anne Rice out there, and she definitely romanticized the whole vampire thing. And of course the Twilight series and blah, blah, blah. But once you start digging deep into what this is all about, you can't really stomach what's happening in these stories. You just can't.
No, it's, I don't know how people do that. I don't know. It's just not for me.
That's why I say, because like I said, Anne Rice, she wrote Interview with the Vampire and all that whole series, and she did a fantastic job. I love the books. But there's a reason why she quit writing them. And I think that is the root of it, is what Josh is talking about, that she's finding out more and more. She's digging into it. She's like, nope, that's it. I'm done. And she just started writing about everything spiritual and God. So, like I said, there's something she ran across. I know there is.
Yeah, and if you dig deep enough into any of this, you'll hit pay dirt. I mean, I did. I mean, there'll be more pay dirts. I mean, every now and then, it's like Anthony said. He goes, every now and then you just come across a really good story from somebody, and it's just it's crazy. And these people weren't fumbling for words. And if this was make believe, then they're pretty damn good fiction writers. They need to go become Stephen King author, type people.
Right.
And they're not. They're one of them preaches part time, and they're deacons at a church, and they are completely like against any of it. And they do expose it. They don't come out on a public stage typically, but I encourage them to tell their story to other podcasters and YouTubers. And I don't know that they will, but I think that they're afraid of too much exposure, would be, and so I told them, I said, yeah, but at some point you're going to have to, and I wasn't trying to talk them into risking themselves, but I said there has to be atonement, maybe that could be it, because they kept talking about feeling like they needed to atone, and I said, well, public awareness, but like they said, a lot of people are still going to think that this is the realm of fantasy, that these demonic temples don't exist and this stuff's not happening. And I know that. I know people are going to think like that. And we as Christians can't even get along with it's Christian attacking Christian because they don't have the same view. How are we ever going to get past any of this and get to where we need to be if we can't even agree on the time of day? That's a big problem. And so I just believe that we should all, you don't have to have the same exact belief, but we should all at least believe that is evil.
Right.
Right. Call a snake a snake. I mean, I put my differences aside when it comes to dealing with these satanic, demonic people. I still consider myself a follower of Christ. I mean, some people may call me whatever, but I draw the line at any sort of like dabbling in anything like that. And these people were like full tilt. I wouldn't even call them people anymore. In fact, that's what, what they were saying was kind of like, that they lost so much of their humanity that they were referring to us as, humans. They weren't really human anymore. They were like some sort of other attachments that they had that made them be vampires, werewolves, whatever, these demons that were attached to them, which they were very specific about it. It was like this attachment that goes into your lower part of your spine, attaches to the upper part of your back, and then it looks through your eyes, and you develop a symbiotic relationship with this thing. And so it has everything to do with the shape-shifting mechanism and everything that So I don't know. Did you ladies see the show on Tuesday, the Vampire Confessions?
Not this past Tuesday. I didn't know.
Yeah, you guys got to go back and check it out, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And then there was a Q&A afterwards because we weren't going to be able to fill it up in an hour and a half podcast episode. So we decided to do a Q&A for a couple of hours afterwards. And that, answered a lot of questions. One of the things that they were talking about that was really interesting to me too was like not just about the shape-shifting, whatever, but they could create illusion. Like they were able to deceive people through their own preconceived notions. Right. Mind control was a very real thing. One of the things that they said too was like weak-willed people, and and I don't know if this is 100% or not, but and I don't want to lead people into saying something that I'm trying to make them say. So I don't try to, when I interview people, I try not to say too much to make them, say it. But I said, hey, what are your thoughts on some of these, weak-minded people you're talking about? How many of them were actually very religious? And he said quite a few, because they were so ingrained in what they believed, whether they were Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever. They thought they had all the answers, and so they wouldn't let themselves be protected. Like they're trying to protect themselves with their mind instead of thinking with their hearts and focusing on God. And now that they're Christian, it really brings it home in a way that you can't do it without. If they were just that, like say they were still doing what they were doing and they were part of that temple, and they would never be able to give you the perspective they have now, because now they're on the other side of the good guys' side. And so their perspective on both sides, they can see it now for what it is, the forest for the trees. And, there was like the beginning of this where they started doing this crap and how they ended up in it. They were bad guys. But then when they got into this, they became really bad guys. And then they became good guys. And now they're leading other people to be good. And he said, Joel anyway, he said that this one of these things about the vampirism and all that, he said it's not like you think it is. It's not like Twilight. It's a nightmare. And you figure the end game is just you're going to burn in hell. Right. And that's it. I mean, there's nothing upside about it. And he said that he would hazard to guess that except for the very few at the top, nobody's really happy with it. It's like a pyramid scheme where everybody's giving their energy and everything to the top beings, and ultimately the high priests and the humans with the most power are still subjugated by and subservient to these demons, these very powerful archdemons. And he said that there's nothing you can do. You can't escape. You can't get away. And one of the worst things he said is that anybody you love or care about at all is just a liability. Which was the case with Gerald, Right. And so he said that, he was the werewolf, and he said, dude, it's like if you have a family, which he did, and he was having to keep it. He goes, I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he balanced it, But one of the things he said too, and I can agree with this. This is something we both hit on. He said, as a vampire, he goes, I slept about 4 hours a day. And I said, well, that's funny because I sleep 4 to 5 hours a day and a half for about 40 years. And he said, yeah, because stupid people sleep too much. And I said, I said, dude, I totally agree with that. He said, Gerald he liked to sleep 6 to 8 hours. And he goes,
right.
You had to be conditioned to not sleep like that because you needed to be up doing things because time was of the essence. He said the dark ones know that their time is short. So they got you working overtime, doing everything they can because they really believe that they can actually escape the wrath of God, which is unbelievable how ridiculously convoluted they are. But these people too, that's the only hope that they have because they think, well, I've already turned my back on God. He's like, I guess, I'm going to have to, throw my lot in with and hopefully these demons or whatever will win. But that's a big problem for them. And so one of the things that I noticed about these beings, these people, whatever you want to call them, their arrogance is their Achilles heel. It really is. And they have a whole lot of like, what do you call it? Like weaknesses,
Right.
They appear to be strong, but really and truly, they can't do anything to God's true people or somebody with a pure heart. They can't do anything to them.
Right.
So, I mean, you're only limited to going after the really bad people that don't know Christ, And so it was like, it wasn't a lot of upside to this when they were telling me all this. I'm like, wow, you have all this ability, but you can't really do anything, It's like, and then they have this, constantly being stressed out, and they don't sleep very much, because they have to be doing things. And he asked me this question. He says, "How did you get to be, to know so much, to have so much knowledge for a normal average person?" And I told him, I said, I don't sleep, and it every week or two, maybe I'll sleep for maybe 6-7 hours, and I'll feel like I recharge. And then it's always at least, 5 hours of sleep. Now, if you think about it, and we talked about this, if you're only sleeping for 5 hours a day, that leaves you with 19 hours in a day.
Right.
So think about what you can do with 19 hours. If you have a routine, you commit to doing certain things every day, like I take a cold shower, I do the Wim Hof breathing or whatever, and then I work out. And then I also, I have a lot of, people I have to talk to. And people have asked me this. They say, how do you run 2 businesses and do the show and, have to talk to all these people? And I tell them, I said, dude, I don't sleep all the time.
Right.
He who loves sleep loves life. That's an old Arab proverb. And when you stop and you start looking at like the people who are very successful, they don't sleep a lot. They do not. And so in order to, you have to have ambition and the will to feed it. These people are working overtime to destroy us. Overtime, and here we are, we're sleeping, some people sleep 10, 12 hours. I've seen it. The younger generation just completely lost. I mean, they'll sleep forever if you let them. They don't have any ambition. They don't want to get up. They don't want to do anything. I've never seen a generation, the youngest generation now, so weak and so just pathetic. And mommy and daddy, if they get into a fight with one of their friends and they get punched, well, we're going to go press charges, Little Johnny got punched in the nose. When I was a kid, my dad would be like, "Did you hit him back?"
Right.
And there you go. We had BB gun fights where we were shooting each other we were aiming for the face. So I got shot in right above in my private right above, and my mom had to take the BB out, and she was all mad. And my dad's like, "Well, don't be shooting BB guns at people. You won't get shot back." We didn't run over there and go tell the kids, "Hey, you know what? Your kid shot me with the BB gun." Blah blah blah. And you're back at it the next day, and you're jumping, to ramps that were flimsy. You shouldn't have been jumping them with your bike. And, I hit my stomach so bad I thought I was going to die. And, I ran into a tree stump on an ATV and flipped. This was just life, how we grew up in Generation X. These people nowadays, oh my gosh, dude! If somebody pointed a water gun at them, they'd be like, "I have PTSD from it. Oh my gosh, this person scared me,"
Or the ones that feel entitled to everything.
Yeah.
They don't believe in earning anything. They feel they're entitled.
Yep. And they want to call the police about everything. Like, if somebody, like I said, points a water gun at them, they got PTSD, and they always run and tell their mom and dad everything. Like, it's weird to me. Like, I'll have people 25 years old working for me, and if you fire them or anything, their mom or dad will call you. And I'm like, who are you? Right. And then they'll want to go pick up their check. I'm like, well, I was like, well, I'll just transfer it over or whatever. And then it's like, okay, well, can we talk about this? No, we're not going to talk about. First of all, it's against the law. I cannot talk to you about that. Right. But it's getting worse and worse. The younger the person, the more involved their mommy and daddy, especially their mommies, are involved in their lives and how they get employed and what they do at work and stuff. And I'm just going like, how is this that your business, And I said, and then when I tell them the truth, I'll be like, well, let's talk about their employment, and I'll tell them they did da 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 da, and they'll be like, oh no. No, little Jimmy would never do that. He's not like that at all. Right. He doesn't do those bad things. I said, really? Well, he sure the hell did a lot of it. How about I show you the camera footage? And one of them, one lady, she was an old Hispanic lady. She said, well, I just don't believe this. This is someone else. I said, that is your son right there. Literally what he did was he was smoking weed and he got busted by a cop. And that cop knew us, and he was nice enough to make him take the uniform off. And then he called me and he said, hey, Josh, I got your guard here, and well, I'm not going to say the name of the site, but he said, I got your guard over here at this apartment complex. He was smoking pot and he had a flask. He goes, and he's 20 years old. So lesson learned, don't hire young people. So I went over there, and this was years ago, and the guy was just skunk drunk, whatever, drunk as a skunk and stoned. And I said, you're fired. And then his grandfather, his mother kept harassing me and started talking about all the bad things that I was. She didn't even know me. And then finally his grandfather reached out to me and he was like, this is some kind of conspiracy. And I'm like, I said, dude, the kid got in trouble because he did something bad, and I have no choice. It's not up to me now to fire him, Yeah. He got a police report done on him. And so it's automatic. And then he's like, they just wouldn't stop until finally I reached out to this guy who was in the military, who was dating that guy's sister, and he worked for us. And shout out to Jesus, but Jesus set him straight and said, dude, stop messing with these people. I've been working for them for a year. They're good people. You screwed up. Just take medicine. Go tell your mommy to stop. And of course, this guy was in the military, for 6 years. And so he was a different type of guy. He wasn't mommy and daddy, But that's what happens, man. And then it even happens in this field too now. Somebody gave me their story through an email. And so I go to talk to this person, and he's got his mother on the phone with him. And so I thought she was like involved in the encounter. Yeah. And this person is probably, they might be listening, they may not, I don't know, but I'm going to say it anyway. His mother kept talking over him. And so I said, hey, man, we'll call him T. I said, T, who is this? He goes, this is my mom. I'm his mother. I'm like, you're 26 years old? Right. She goes, what, is that a problem? And I'm like, look, I don't know what this is. She goes, who are you exactly? What is this show about? What do you want? What do you do? What network are you with? I said, this is a podcast, lady. Yeah. I said, I don't need this crap. So then the guy's texting me and he's saying, well, just play along until she gets off the phone because she wants to know what happened to me. She wants to make sure I'm not being taken advantage of. And I'm like, taken advantage of how? Right. I'm like, what are you talking about? Right. I'm like, you're telling us a story. I said one of my nephews plucked the story out of the email, and you said you saw a dog man or whatever, and then his mother was like, I told you it was a mistake to tell anyone what happened, and I'm like, so I asked her, I said, ma'am, were you there? Did it happen to you? And she goes, no, I never saw anything like that. She goes, I've never had problems with demons and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. I said, well, I'm not really understanding why you're on the phone. I was like, does he? And she goes, he lives under my roof. And I'm like, okay. And so I texted the guy. I said, look, man, when you're not with your mom, you want the story told, right, whatever. And then he tried calling me back like a couple days later. And at that point, I was like, look, man, if your mom's going to get on the phone, I'm not even going to whatever. So then I started getting texts from a weird number, and it was his mother. And she was like, I heard you talking bad about me. I'm like, dude, I said, man, wow. I tried this. So I just blocked them, and I said, I'm done. Yeah. You know, I mean, this is a 26-year-old guy whose mother is all in his business about, you know, don't be talking about what happened to you, you know. And I was like, this is weird, man. Like,
yeah, that is weird. Because I mean, just like the comment I just put up, Dana Dawson, she says teenagers and young adults are taking their parents into job interviews with them now.
Yep.
I would not hire that person. Not at all.
Well, the funniest thing is I had this happen. I've had the parents call in sick for their children.
Yeah, that happens to me all the time.
BS. They need to call.
And I tell them no. You know, and it's like, your kids have never seen Bigfoot, and it shows. Just saying. And it shows. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And they never will either because mommy and daddy keep cuddling them.
Yeah.
Know?
They don't even go out in the woods nowadays. They just watch, you know, like documentaries from the room or something.
Yeah. It's altogether different. I just, you know, the one thing I got to say, like, I believe I am that person, you know, I believe in spanking kids. And, you know, you don't even have to spank them to hurt them. You spank them.
I know, you just hurt their feelings. You just hurt their feelings.
Hurt their feelings, you know, and I did my kids. And I got to tell you, though, I'm pretty proud of that part of my kids, though. They're both their kids, my grandchildren, you know, they get spanked when they need to. It's not just, there's no time out in them houses. And there was no time out in my house either, you know.
Oh, thanks, man.
All right. Right. You know, that's why I think it's so important to, you know, especially Josh and Krista, what we do. I mean, we get out there. We've got to make sure we get these kids out there, get them doing something besides being in their phone, you know, get them interested in the cryptids and in the paranormal, get them going into something. History's great. Yeah. You know, take them out, take them to places where they can learn history, do anything, please do something. Because they, you know, I think we're losing our future to our telephones.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, they're not telephones anymore, are they? They're little mini computers that we carry around with us that solve half the mysteries of the universe. So
right.
That's a big part of a problem, too. And what we're seeing now, and I read a lot of articles, and I do this in my spare time in my other office when I'm in the restroom. Sorry, folks. It's just, I don't stop I read constantly.
Right.
So, you know, it is what it is. And so I said, you know, I've said this before, you know, like reading is fundamental, and it's not even a saying. It's not a joke. It really is. So I was watching a video on TikTok, but it wasn't I don't have TikTok, but it was TikTok that was on Instagram or something. And there was this guy, this a few weeks ago, man. And this guy was interviewing these young people. And there was this one young Asian girl, and I remember her coming on there, and they asked her about reading because they were talking about, you know, do you read? And she's like, no. And they were like, where are you from originally? And the guy interviewing her was an Asian guy, you know, and he was real spot on, dude. And she's like, well, my mother's family is from Vietnam or whatever. And he was like, oh, okay. And he's like, and you don't read? And she goes, right. No, I hate reading. And he goes, you know, that's a shame because he goes, I'm Asian, you know, and he's like, my family's Cambodian, but he's like, it's sad because he's like, and her friend's kind of like, I read, you know, she said that, or her friend did, whatever. She goes, then he said, what do you read? And it wasn't anything good. And so I don't remember what she said, but it was some kind of dumb magazines or something. And the other girl, he told her this, he kind of dressed her down and he goes, your family came over here, busted their ass. He goes, I would hazard to guess your mom and dad or your grandmother, somebody in your ancestry busted their ass scrubbing feet and scrubbing floors and whatever they had to do, painting nails, whatever, just so you could sit here in designer clothes. And she had like a what do you call that brand, the bag, the Coach. He's like, so you can have a Coach purse and just laugh when I ask you if you can read. And she goes, well, that's very rude. He goes, no, I think it's very ignorant. And so he went on to the next guy, and there was this kid, and he was Jamaican. And he was like, do you read? And he goes, nah, man, I just get blowed. You know, I smoke out, you know. And I was like, what the hell? And so the same thing applied. I was like, this guy's family probably came over here as immigrants and busted their ass. I had a guy that worked for me for 20 years. He was a Jamaican guy. Workaholic. He worked for me, and he worked for my friend. And so he worked 2 jobs for like 20 years. Wow. This guy was an absolute monster, workaholic. shout out to you, Frazier. Frazier's a great guy. He's from Jamaica. Hardest working guys I've ever seen. I hired him at the club years ago, and then we just stayed friends for years and years and still are. And it's like, dude, his sister came to visit, and she had not had a day off in 2 years when she came to visit.
Oh. Wow.
But she was like, I don't know what to do with myself. All I do is work. And I'm just like, this is crazy, you know? But yet, you know, once that first generation's done, the kids are just like, oh, well, you know, it's time to just be a little, you know, potheads and let's play video games. And video games are okay. I used to play them, but, you know, I also would only sleep 5 hours a day. So I had a couple hours a day to if I wanted to play video games for 2 hours, that gives me 17 hours to do whatever. But these kids now, they're so goofy and so stupid. And they get so like, you know, it's like this one guy was like, it was so crazy. He was talking crap in one of his little rants or whatever. And you know, you scroll through all this junk, and it might have been my wife or somebody that had it on there. And he was like, you know, back in the day when you went to a strip club, he's like, people cared about you. And nowadays it's horrible. These women just want money. I started laughing so hard. I said, what day were you back in where that was part of the curriculum? They taught you, hey, go to a strip club, and you walk out, I just didn't feel loved. Like, what are you talking about? She's trying to make money, and she don't give a crap about you, and she's not going to remember you unless you do something gross. You know, all these dudes look the same, you know, and you know, it's crazy. Like, one of the ladies that I actually interviewed that's what she does for a living. And I don't judge. That's not me. I don't go to those places. I've never been comfortable in those kind of places. And that's the God's honest truth. I've never really been. I don't like the way it feels in there. I think I can feel all the energy. I don't like it. You know? And so, you know, she was telling me, she was just like giving me the straight 411. Some of the people I've interviewed about stuff, they'll veer off into other like weird side projects, you know, and they'll start talking. And she was telling me about these guys that would go in there and this was about, you know, werewolves or whatever, because she said, I think one of these guys was a werewolf because I heard them talking about changing. And I said, well, it could be that, or it could have been a reptilian, you know, I don't know. And she's like, well, I just thought I'd give you the heads up. And her story wasn't, and no offense, I told her, I said, your story's not really show worthy, but I appreciate you telling me the information. I'll keep my ears open, you know? And she started telling me, I said, what about your friends? You have friends that had any weird experiences and stuff? And so she did. I did get a story from one of her friends who had another friend that she worked with at another joint. And she had something attached to her, literally, that they could see it coming out of her back. And there was this like black goo. And so that was a really crazy story. And several people witnessed it. But the girl that originally reached out to me, she said, yeah, I got some friends that could tell you some weird stories, you know, but she goes, most of it's not paranormal. I said, nah, I don't hear any weird stories. I just, you know, if you got it, whatever. But she was saying like some of these people that come in there, now she's been doing it for like 10 years. She's like, in the last few years, there's like this younger generation and they want to cry to you and for you to be their therapist. And she's like, look, man, do you want a lap dance? Because I'm not here to be your therapist. And she said some of them would get all offended and be like, well, I'm going to just leave then, you know, whoa. And then she told me a funny story with this one guy. You've heard of people's wives or you know, girlfriends going into a strip club and dragging a guy out. You know, it happened to my aunt. She had to do that to my uncle, dirty ass. But this particular guy had his mom. It's like a 25-year-old kid or whatever guy. Had his mom coming in there, smacking him on the head and yanking him out by his ear, you know, and pulling him out of a strip club, and then started demanding the woman give him his money back. And she was like this, and I said that typifies our generation right now, where we're at. You know, if they break something on a vehicle, even if it's used vehicle they bought from somebody, they will actually go back to the person and be like, yo, I want my money back. I broke the axle. It's like, yeah, you broke the axle. You're not getting your money back for this car. You know what as is, dude? That's what it means. And then they always want to go and tell their mom and dad, then their mom and dads make the call. Oh, I'm going to get, you know, so-and-so and so-and-so law firm to get after you because, you know, whatever. I mean, and if you tell them to do their job, then you're being unruly And if they don't, if they feel scared or at any time during their job, then they want to say that it's an unsafe work environment.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, it's security, dude. What do you think you're supposed to be doing?
Right.
There could come a time when you have to be a man and do stuff, you know. One guy had his mom quit for him. She calls me up the day of, and she's like, I want to tell you that Jonathan's not coming in today. He's not feeling good. And I said, well, okay. This is the second day in a row. Is there something going on? And I was like, and I was thinking to myself, I didn't say it, but why are you calling me, lady? And then she's like, yeah, well, you know, he got really scared at that one building you sent him to. And this may be a little paranormal, I guess, but she was like, and I said, scared how? It's full of homeless people. She goes, nah, that wasn't the problem. But he said he heard a voice and it scared him. He doesn't want to go to work now. I said, well, there's like 12 other accounts he can go to. I can send him somewhere else. And she goes, yeah, but what if he runs into the same problem? And I'm like, then he's a little
maybe he needs to look into a different line of work.
I told her, I said, maybe he should go work at Burger King, you know, where he won't be, he can have it his way and not be so scared.
Right. But then he might burn his fingers.
She was really
my first question would be, does he sleep with the light on?
He sleeps
You
with
should
a teddy
put
bear.
You need to put that on applications now. Do you sleep with the light on?
Yeah. We have had, like, one of y'all was saying about interviews where they bring their mom and dad. Somebody was in the chat saying,
yeah,
that has happened to us a few times. And like at my office, y'all been to my office, you know. Mm-hmm. So the front part, that's where we would talk to people, interview people, whatever. And so if you think that there's somebody that's going to do better, whatever, we might sit in the other room and talk. Hey, what can you do for us? Blah blah blah. You know. Right. And I had, like, at least twice, I've had somebody, mom and dad waiting downstairs, and they're hurrying me. To you know, the kid's hurrying me. Not a kid, like one of them was 30 years old, but he's hurrying me. He's like, my mother's waiting. And I said, you know what? I'll get back to you, man. This is, you know, we'll get. And I just, you know, he was oblivious that I was never going to call him again. You know, and then there was this other guy that came in, and he was like standing there all, you know, at attention and everything. I said, were you in the military? He goes, no, sir. I was very, very polite, you know. And I said, so, you know, do you have any experience? He goes, no, sir. I want to learn. I'm 22 years old, and this is my first job. I was like, what? Like 22 years old. I was like, do you have a degree or something? Did you go to college? He goes, no. My mother thought it best that I'd be able to be of drinking age before I could, you know, start working. And I said, what? And so it just was like, I said, okay, well, I tell you what, man. I said, is your mom here with you? He goes, yes, she is. And then she's like knocking on the glass, and I was like, come in. You know, she walks in, and I'm like, why is your mother here at the office where you're supposed to be trying to get a job? Like, I don't understand this. Yeah, it's some weird stuff. And Anthony can tell you some too. You know, like the mommy's giving him the information so that he can type it into the system to do the background check. And they're like telling him things like, well, he only did this one crime, and they gave him a felony for it, but I didn't think it was right, you know. And it's like, and Anthony's like, you know, it doesn't matter whether you think it was right or not. It's what the state says. Like, I mean, you know, the federal government, we have laws, lady, and we can't circumvent them because little Johnny, you know, he was brandishing a gun at the In-N-Out Burger, and maybe he shouldn't have done it. I don't know. Right. Like, he was stoned, and I'm like, all the more reason for us to not hire him. I mean, I can sit here all day and tell you stories about that weird crap. I mean, it's
absolutely. That's funny. Yeah, these you know, in the line of work too that I do, you know, we help a lot of people, and there are truly good people out there who do need help with like utility bills and things like that. I get, but I'll tell you what, you wouldn't believe how many people out there play the system. Yeah. Oh yeah. And they've learned it's you know, they've learned from their parents who have learned from their parents who, you know, it's just
unfortunately it's now a way of life. It's this is what they do. This is what they're taught to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, it's sad. It really is sad. You know, my thing is, so I'm 52 years old, and I have grown biological kids. I also adopted, you know, right now they're almost 12 and 14. And I'm the old parent, you know, so like when these kids, for instance, when my kid wants to go spend the night somewhere, I want to talk to the parents. I want to make sure it's okay that the kids just aren't making, the plans and that the parents are aware and they're going to be home type thing. Nobody else's parents does that. Like, am I the only one that does that? Brandy, do you do that?
Absolutely. Because I had to tell my youngest the other day, because she said she had a friend at school and she wanted to go stay at her house. I said, sweetheart, I said, it can't be tonight. I've not met their parents. I don't, because,
Right.
We all know that humans are absolutely the worst. I mean, they're
people out there.
Yeah.
They're the worst. And I'm more scared of them than anything else out there. And, and she didn't quite understand it until I started explaining it to her. I'm like, well, hon, I don't know her. I don't know the parents. I'm not going to let you go over to somebody's house where I have no clue who these people are.
Right.
So she wasn't mad at me. I mean, she wasn't mad at me after we were done talking. She wasn't mad at me. I mean, she's a little upset, but she wasn't mad at me. She understood.
Yeah.
But yet, no, I don't do that.
I don't either.
And when we were kids, it was pretty commonplace for us to be, to spend the night at each other's house and do things and hang out and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was always getting invited, like on the weekends, to go stay the night at friends' houses, and there'd usually be like 2 or 3 of us or something, 4 of us even, and we'd all have a sleepover and we'd hang out. I wasn't like, when I was a kid, I was a pretty average kid. I wasn't like I wasn't a dork, like oh, this kid's a horrible dork, but I wasn't like the cool kid. I was just an average kid. But I had my share. I had a lot of friends. Like, my friends would always be like, hey, come over to my house this weekend, and I had like my friend Ronnie, my friend David, my friend Keith, that kind of thing. But my mom knew who they were, and she never bugged because she knew them and knew the parents, and they were like, yeah, they're best friends, whatever. But nowadays it would be, it is messed up because you don't know what the hell they're doing or what kind of freaking perv their people can be. And we know now, like, how many weirdos there are. And there's serial killers and all kinds of stuff. But to me, once you get into the 20s, at least the early 20s, it's time to cut them loose and let them be adults. That's the thing I'm talking about is like, if your mommy can't quit holding your hand by the time you're in your 20s and then it also speaks to the character of the child because, your child will start to, because mine did, and I've raised 4 of them. They'll start to pull away and be like, look, I'm 17, I'm 18, I want to go do this, and you're like, okay. And then they go and they spread their wings or whatever. And if they decide to stick around, they stick around. If they leave, they leave, but you can't corner them and hold them down or whatever. And a lot of times though, what they do is they'll move out and they'll go and they'll see how bad it sucks living with their peers. And then if they decide to come back, I'll be like, you're paying rent. This is not you live here for free. You left like you were supposed to leave, but now you're back. So you pay your part and then we'll be cool. You do what you want, but you're going to pay your bills. I ain't paying that for you, and thank goodness, man, most of my boys, have turned out pretty good. And well, the exception of one, he's a hellraiser, but he's getting better. He's not as, but he fights all the time with my brother, who's like, that's just a problem. And so, I have to separate him, keep them separated. But there's this, sort of rift that develops with these parents nowadays. If the kid tells them, hey, I want a little independence. I don't want you coming into my room without me, whatever. And then they're like, well, why not? I'm just your mom and dad, let's. And so there is a line there that has to be drawn. And for me, I was never too lax because I in the line of work I'm in, I know there's a lot of weirdos.
Oh yeah.
Especially in a big city. But, once they got to a certain age, it was like, they have a vehicle, they're going to do what they want. I don't care. As long as they're not doing drugs or hurting people or doing anything like that, it's just.
Absolutely. I was married once before. My ex-husband had 4 kids with his ex, and then we had the 2 together. So total, and then my current husband, he's got 3 boys. And so I've raised 11 kids. And you know what? They're all turning out to be pretty good kids. If I can get these last 2, like the other 9, my job is done.
It's all done.
It's funny how, we're talking about the paranormal here, and that's what this show is. And I'm probably going to get roasted for taking it to back in the day or whatever. I was
not at all.
In the 80s. I was born in the mid 70s. I don't remember much about it. I remember being a kid, little bitty, but
Yeah.
the 80s was where I really grew up. And I was a
too.
latchkey kid by the time it was the mid 80s. And so, I grew up with my own self. I was just kind of like left to my own. And my parents were just there to whoop my ass. It just seemed like, they were like, you know what? You did this, we'll whoop your ass. And that's it. I went to an Abeka school, a very serious Christian Science academy where they preached like, the world is this way and that. I remember them taking my book about dinosaurs and tearing it to pieces. It was a book I got for Christmas. Infuriated my dad just because of the price point. He got it at Walden Books for like $13, which $13 in 1985 is, not $13 now, And so my dad was really angry about it. My mom was like, "You're mad about the money. I'm mad at the fact that they took his book and just destroyed it and dressed him down in front of everybody." Because I took it to show my friends what I'd gotten for Christmas, and it broke my heart. We never could find another book because we lived in a small town. You didn't go to the big city very often. So when we finally did, I couldn't find the book anymore because in the mall, there was Walden Books and B. Dalton Books. And so I remember in replacement of that dinosaur book, get this, it was the first book I ever got about the paranormal. And it was, God, what was his name? Something Cohen. He had a Jewish last name. That's all I remember. He was an author. A lot of people remember him because when I've talked about it with Ron Murphy, who was on here earlier, and with David Weatherly, and they remember him. I want to say it's Steve Cohen or something like that. But anyway, it was the only monster book I had until I got older, and it was fascinating to me. But I read it and then I was like, well, whatever, maybe it was Edward Cohen. I don't remember. But anyway, the book had like this story about the Goat Man in there. I remember as a kid hearing about the Goat Man of Wilbarger Bridge over in Maynard, Texas. And of course, I had Loki on my show, my friend Loki, and of course, Chief. We call him Chief because his mother's a full-blooded Lipan. So, he calls himself that, Chief, whatever. And I said, you ain't no chief. His dad's always like, he was always teasing him. He's like, you think you're a chief, but you're a little goose, And so anyway, they claimed to have looked down one time into the creek on the bus ride home and saw what looked like a goat man standing in that creek bed. And that has been something that always stuck with them. And not far from there is a church in New Sweden, which is right in between Taylor, Texas, where I'm from. And here's an interesting piece of whatever to leave the audience before we go. And there was an encounter that somebody gave us of a goat man standing in the churchyard, right there in the church in New Sweden, which is in between my hometown and their hometown of Maynard, which unfortunately is where that crazy woman that took a crap in Johnny Depp's bed. That's where she's from.
Wow.
She's from Maynard, Texas, too.
Wow.
What's her name? I forgot her name. But
Amber
Heard.
There you go.
Amber Turd. So what she did was crazy. But, so that's what Maynard, people know about Maynard, was that woman's from there. But anyway, there's a story about that. So Linda Godfrey put in one of her books, and I actually worked with her on maybe 3 different cases in Texas. There were 2 in particular in Austin and 1 there. And then I guess kind of one out by Lake Travis, which she really just told me about it. So I don't count that. That's not my job. I don't take credit. But there was a story that she had talked about. And this guy saw this like hairy humanoid creature that was upright with backward bent legs that looked wolf-like. So I told Linda, a couple years after that came out, I told Linda, I said, I'm not challenging what you said, but what if that was a goat man? Because I had no reports of dog man in that area, in that particular area, but it was always a goat man. There was always goat man. And in fact, I've now fielded about 6 reports right there in that area. And we did a construction build out there. We finished it about 2 years ago, and the guards out there were always hearing, this is crazy. My brother was one of them. Him and his son were working out there, and they would hear what sounded like a goat, and then they'd hear a growl and a shriek come out of the woods around that place. And so one day my brother, I don't know if he's in the chat or whatever, but he's like, man, there's like a goat man or something out here. And when he said that, he grew up in Michigan. He's my half brother, same dad, different mom. And so he grew up in Michigan, but when he came down, I told him about all the legends and stuff. And he was all talking about the Michigan Dogman and thinking that's what I had seen. So we got into this whole paranormal thing together, right? And then he kind of dropped out because of all the drama. But then, he said, dude, I hear this like goat man sound. I don't know what it is, And so I told him, I said, I don't know if you know this, but Chief and Loki are good friends, Our friend Luke, they're all from this area, Maynard. And I said, there's the story of a goat man. And nobody really knows exactly what the origins are of it. I've talked about it on the show before, and I've been on other people's shows, and we've talked about goat man. And I told him, I said, the legend is, that there is a goat man. And so I often wondered if that story that was given to Linda, that person thought they saw a dog man, if that was really a goat man.
Goat man, right.
So,
Interesting. Interesting.
Wow.
Before we go, we do have one question starred, and he asked a couple times, so I do want to answer this, and we'll see what you guys have to think. Hawk asked, I want to know why all nightclubs are haunted.
Well, Hawk, I mean, I think I've seen you around in Barton's chat. I think you're
for sure.
He's pretty well versed in things like this, and I'll give you my opinion on it. I ran a nightclub for 8 years, so or almost 8 years. I can tell you this: a lot of bad things happen in them. It is full of awfulness and negativity. A lot of drugs pass through there, and people die. And at least 3 people died when I was working there. 2 of them died. One of them died behind our club. One of them was stabbed in the club and died out in front of the club out in the street, and another one was killed right there at with the exit. We had the entrance like this, like a horseshoe, and the exit on the other side. And I watched him bleed to death. I mean, there's nothing anybody could do. He was stabbed in the neck. There was nobody going to save him. And I actually, Scorpion and the guy we were just talking about, one of the other guys, they were holding him and trying to, help him. But I mean, what can you do? And one time, me and my brother were working at another nightclub, which was basically it was all people from Mexico that went there. And there was a guy who got stabbed in the neck, and it was not a real huge gash, but it just kept spurting and spurting and spurting. And it was like a hole. So whatever they got stuck in with, I think it was like a screwdriver or something. He kept talking and screaming and yelling and talking. And I'm thinking, this guy is bleeding out faster and faster. And my brother's like, I ain't touching this dude. We're not medics, And so I told him in Spanish to chill out, calm down, sit down. And he wouldn't know, man. And he started cussing at me back, and all this stuff. And I said, all right, you know what? The hell with you. And he just sat there. And then eventually his eyes rolled and he just, And my brother was just like, dude, well, I mean, like, we didn't laugh in the way like, ha, 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 but we were like, well, I mean, and she's like, y'all are laughing at him and blah, blah, blah. He's dying. And I'm like, nobody's laughing. But I mean, you tell him we were trying to put a compression on it, whatever. But, I've been there when people have expired. I've watched at another club, there was a guy who got alcohol poisoning, not at our bar, but somewhere else. So these people die, they die. And then you got ours was a 3-level dance club. Before I started there was a story that I never could confirm that a young lady had climbed up on the railing and then she fell head first and died on the dance floor, which I kind of think there might be some truth to that, because sometimes I would hear what I thought was a scream and then you'd hear something. And then I go and look and there's nothing there. And I'm there doing the liquor order, So there was something, to that, and before that, years and years ago, it was a stable. And it was used and you can see how the cement, the arches and whatever, and it was used that was where you put your horses so you could go run around and hell raise on 6th Street. And that's what it was for years. It's a Texas landmark now, whatever, it can't be torn down. But that's my answer for that, Hawk. I think that what happens is a lot of evil, a lot of negativity, and then you got Zoomers and millennials that don't feel loved. And, that's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a lot of people to thank tonight, man. Everybody, they're awesome. Bigfoot Michigan Rob, Jason, thank you very much. Liberty 1776.
Paratroopers, both of those guys for sure.
Yep.
And Rob
DCG.
too.
And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Awesome. And then BMR again. And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 again. DCG again. Auntie Honey, Ania, Nicholas Bravo, and Shade Viking, member for 2 months. Thank you, everybody.
On my chat too. I appreciate you guys showing up and supporting Bonds and Booze.
Yeah.
I'm with them indefinitely. Every Thursday, I'm going to be with them. I have a good time, and you ladies are the best, and I really enjoy the conversations, and I hope that you don't get me talking, because apparently it's a
same. Absolutely. Hush.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I have a dog that does not like my cat, and every time the cat walks by, the dog barks. Crazy.
Our animals. We have a pig, and we've said this before, and we have 4 dogs, and only one of the dogs doesn't like him. All the other dogs think he's just like them. And bless his heart, he goes up to her all the time and tries to be nice to her, and she's like, rah, rah, rah. And she's only like that with him. All the other animals are cool, but she hates him like with a passion, and I don't know why.
Right.
Yeah, because that happened to us on the phone yesterday. We were talking on the phone, and Josh had to stop. Stop it! Quit it! Leave him alone!
She kept going at him. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I tell my wife it's her vicious little schnauzer from California. She's too primp. She's like, but she's not. Her name's Baby, and she's a really sweet dog, but she just does not like the pig. I don't know. I think because what it is, she's attached to my brother, and she thinks she's my brother's dog. So when my brother comes, here, because he's got a place that, they gave him a place to stay at the job site. So he stays out there as a supervisor for the job site. But when he's here at the house, he pets the pig and he feeds the pig, because he kind of likes the pig, And I think she's really jealous. Like, she's like a little person, and she watches him like, And so I think she snaps out at him,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just wanted to remind everybody, Blondes and Booze will be back tomorrow night at 7:00. And between 8:30 and 9, Josh has his newest live episode coming on. So make sure you tune in for that too.
Yeah, and tomorrow night we actually have a dogman encounter. We have a guest coming on to talk about their dogman encounter.
Oh, who's that? I'm going to check that out.
I'll tell you backstage. I don't know if he wants me to tell his name, but he's in chat a lot, and you'll recognize him, but I'll tell you backstage for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. Check it out, folks. And then I won't probably be on until 9. I say 8:30 every damn time, and we just can't get it done because Friday just I need to quit lying, to be honest.
I always say 8:30 because there's going to be that time,
And we did that last Sunday. We actually showed up a little bit earlier, and everybody was
like,
"Whoa, I thought I was going to miss it," and I said, "Well, we were on time for once, but we'll get it done."
Yep, there you go. Well, once again, we appreciate everybody, and we will see everybody here tomorrow night, different time, 7 p.m. And have a good night, everybody. Yes, Central.
Good night.
Good night.